Insider presents Geek Speak with Matthew Harris and Meredith Lachlan. We cover entertainment, news, and tech with special guest appearances. So sit back and enjoy as we geek out together right now.
Good evening, everybody. This is Meredith Lachlan with my co-chair, Matthew Harris, and we have a special guest tonight. If you are into blockchain and cryptocurrency, if you're looking into DeFi and all of that fun stuff on the blockchain, then you want to sit and listen to Jake Yocom-Piatt. He is the co-founder and project lead of Decred. Let me drop this card here so that we can say hello. He's kind of shy, guys, so he's not on camera, but that's okay. That's okay. Hi, Jake. How are you?
Welcome to the show.
I'm well, and it's it's really nice to have be on the show and to have an opportunity to talk about cryptocurrency with y'all.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot happening now. We did a couple of press releases for you guys. First of all, congratulations on DCRDEX. That's huge, and I do have a couple of questions on that. But you also did something really interesting, which was a municipal voting in Brazil.
Yeah. We have a lot going on at Decred lately, and so the first thing you pointed out was the DCRDEX, so that's our decentralized exchange, and we released that on October 21st, and we've had pretty good price action and engagement as a function of that recently, so that seems to be going well in the direction that we would like. And in terms of municipal elections, recently there were municipal elections across Brazil, and so in the capital city of Sao Paulo, there were mayoral candidates that used a time stamping and attestation platform to attest to funds that were donated to them, and they did that by anchoring that data into the Decred blockchain. So what that did is it made the donations transparent on an individual level, quite a bit unlike how we operate here in the US, where there's, dark money, super PACs where money just shows up and then goes into political campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jake, explain to everybody, what Decred is. A lot of folks out there, they know that there are various cryptocurrencies. They know, they may know the word blockchain, but just so give the broad spectrum of what is Decred and what makes it stand out or make it different from, any of the other cryptos that are out there.
Sure thing. At a very high level, if you ask what a cryptocurrency is a special kind of game that you play online where the game is to create timestamps. And so everybody wants to create a series of timestamps to go, like I sent money to Matthew then sent money to Meredith sent money to me, because the order in which those operations happen is super important, right? Because if I didn't have any money to send Matthew in the first place, I shouldn't be allowed to send money. So, time ordering of transactions is really important. So cryptocurrencies are about time stamping. And what Decred does is Decred, gets a little bit more meta with that. If you start with Bitcoin, it's just the timestamp. And with Decred, what we've done is we've added some meta, a meta game to it, which is there are rules to every one of these time stamping games. So we define the rules ourselves so that we can evolve and adapt over time. Whereas, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin end up with quite a lot of fighting and arguing about, well, should we add this? Oh, should we add that? Oh, should we add SegWit? So we don't do that. We have basically a secure voting system built into our cryptocurrency that allows us to resolve these kinds of disputes. And then the other things that we focus on that are a little bit different is we focus on security, whereas most cryptocurrencies use a pure proof of work algorithm where it's just about the time stamping. We add a second authentication factor to that, which is this secure voting that I just mentioned, so that it's very expensive to attack the blockchain. And when I say attack it, I mean effectively reorganize the blockchain in terms of going, the time ordering of transactions that I also just mentioned. The last thing that we focus on is sustainability. And, anyone who's worked on an open source, software project knows that funding of these projects, it doesn't just come out of nowhere. You have to get somebody to donate money to, pay for the infrastructure and for the software development work that occurs. And what we did is that after, I and some of my developers I work with had worked in the Bitcoin space for several years, we saw a real tragedy of the commons, which is that it's a great project, and there's some great software there, but the money has to come from somewhere. So people ended up going to venture capital, and then venture capital gets involved. And so there's a real conflict of interest there. And what we did is we actually self-fund our work by having what is effectively a built-in blockchain tax. 10% of every block goes to a subsidy so that we can pay ourselves to do the development work.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm. Now, I did see something about de-incentivizing bad behavior, and I know that you touched on that a bit, because I am part of a couple of blockchain-based online communities like Steemit, Whale Shares, Hive, and things like that, where the witnesses, so those are the people who operate the servers, a lot of times they go in and they kind of there's an opportunity to game the system, where they're getting a lot of credits and stuff. They're powering up. They basically kind of buy themselves into the top tier witnesses and things like that. How does Decred de-incentivize that kind of bad behavior as far as the back end things, not so much the front end?
Well, I think something that's notable in the context of Steemit is Steemit and EOS have a similar consensus system, where what there are is that there are, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say that there's effectively block producers, right? Where there's elections and then people get elected, and then the block producers with the most votes, those are the ones who produce the blocks and then get the subsidy, the income from producing the blocks. Whereas with Decred, we use a different system. So what we do is we have a lottery. So there's basically there's a target number of tickets in a lottery. You temporarily lock your coins to purchase these tickets in the lottery. Then there's a rolling pseudo-random process. So every block, 5 people are chosen from this lottery to then participate in voting on the next block. So that process really levels the playing field in the sense that if 2 people both have the same stake, and when I say stake, that means roughly number of coins and roughly number of tickets. If you have 200 Decred and I have 200 Decred, and then we both stake it and participate in this ticket system, we both have an equal chance of participating in the block creation process and thereby gaining the block subsidy. So that there isn't this hyper concentration of income in the top few block producers. And that's a misgiving that I've always had with the way these consensus systems work, specifically in the case of Steemit and EOS. And I think those are both Dan Larimer projects. So it doesn't surprise me that the consensus systems are pretty similar.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the exciting things that I read about also was the atomic swaps. Can you explain that to our listeners in kind of a generic, easy to follow way? Because atomic swaps, that is very exciting to be able to kind of go across chain and stuff.
I think atomic swaps are interesting because they're both extremely useful and relatively simple. And then, they're also, I think, an example of one of the most useful elementary smart contracts that's out there. So the way they work is I have coins on chain A, and maybe you have coins on chain B. We want to exchange those coins without having to do hey, I'm going to send my coins first. I hope you send your coins afterwards, right? No one wants to be the first person through the door there because they might they might catch a bullet. So no one wants to do that sort of a trust-based swap. So the way you work around that and you do an atomic swap is that instead of me sending you the coins directly, I publish a hash puzzle on chain A. So I say, we agree on some rate, we agree on some number of coins to swap. Then I publish a puzzle, and then I say, hey Meredith, I've just published a puzzle. Then what you have to do is you go and you publish the same puzzle on chain B where you have your coins. Then by merit of the fact that we've both published the same puzzle, I know the solution to the puzzle in advance because I published it first, right? Then I can take your coins because I know the solution to the puzzle you just published. Then because you can see me publishing the solution on, you can then take the coins on chain A that I put up there and essentially locked in this contract. So it's using the hash preimage problem, which is a very difficult problem to solve computationally, to protect these coins and have it so that I can't take them unless you can take, basically you can't take mine unless I can take yours. And so that process makes it as close to atomic as you're really going to get without making it too complicated.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And what chains is Decred working with?
Well, so in the context of DCRDEX, so there's a whole bunch of infrastructure, right, with this price discovery process. Like, I have 100 Decred, you have 0.1 Bitcoin. How many do we want to swap? Like, there's a lot size. There's some other important details like price, and so that information gets exchanged. And remind me what your question was. I got a little off in the weeds there.
Oh. That is a good question, because I think I probably forgot. I did a Matthew.
I usually do it, Jake. I will get to talking, and then I do like you did. I get off track, and then I totally forget what I was going to
I was totally on the journey with you, Jake.
I was ready to answer the question, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm circling back to the question," and oh my, I've forgotten the question.
And what was it? Well, that's the problem of not writing down the question. Okay, so moving forward though, is this exchange, is it friendly to the U.S.? Because I know that there are a lot of exchanges where U.S. citizens don't have access.
Yeah, there's a huge number of restrictions on the exchange process, and it's a bit out of character for FinCEN and sort of the financial regulatory folks to have created reasonable regulations and sort of input in this context. But specifically, right, the problem is that the amount of financial surveillance that goes on inside the United States and for United States citizens and residents is pretty ridiculously high. So foreign exchanges don't want to deal with that because it puts a huge onus on them. Then they have to take out a whole bunch of money transmitter licenses and all sorts of stuff. So it's just a huge headache for people to run businesses like that. And the way that DCRDEX sidesteps that is as follows: is any decentralized exchange ends up having an easy time here because FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, actually put out guidance that explicitly states that you are not a money transmitter if you have if you provide people with a means to figure out prices and to execute swaps, as long as it's non-custodial. So as long as the server that's actually coordinating these swaps doesn't take custody of the assets at any point, this is not money transmission. So you and I can swap, and we don't have to do KYC AML with any centralized authority. So that's a huge load off of any operators back, and also on from a privacy and security perspective from you and I. That is that we don't have to give up our information to some centralized place that can have it leaked or stolen or whatever. And we end up being able to exchange cryptocurrency without basically being spied on.
Okay, so how would that maybe compare to Monero? Because Monero, obviously, they love being anonymous.
Yeah. So I'm pretty familiar with how Monero works in their privacy system, and so the way Monero works, right, is that everything's deniable. I can send a transaction and it looks like it could go several different, it could be coming from several different places, but it goes to one place. So you can never really tell what's spent and what isn't. And the difference here is that even though you're transacting, the cross-chain atomic swaps aren't really, at least we don't have the privacy wired in yet, because that's kind of an advanced feature. But at least on the surface, no one has to submit KYC AML. So it's really more along the lines of us transacting on, let's say just the Decred blockchain. There's an input, there's an output, funds got sent from address A to address B. as opposed to some exchange having a record of our KYC information doing that. So we don't have the Monero level privacy, but we do have privacy that's sort of like a normal blockchain transaction level privacy here.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Now, how did you guys decide to launch? What was the nexus for Decred? What made you guys decide? Okay, we want to do a cryptocurrency, a blockchain based currency, but this is what we want to do differently. How did that come about?
Well, the way that came about is that we worked in the Bitcoin space from early 2013 until probably really 2016, and we were responsible for the alternative full node Bitcoin implementation called BTC Suite. So that was that's ended up getting used in the Lightning Networks, LND from Lightning Labs, and several other products throughout the Bitcoin ecosystem. But it never really caught on as a full node implementation itself. So even though we built it, it was like, okay, we have a minority of users who were into it. We built it. I spent quite a good deal of money, funding that work and time managing that work. But it really became a tragedy of the commons thing because we didn't have funding for that, and then Blockstream shows up, has tens of millions of dollars of VC funding, and that was sort of that. At that point, it was kind of like, I see where this ship's headed, and it's going somewhere where it's like I'm a wealthy guy, but I'm not going to throw down tens of millions of dollars to try to compete with a bunch of Silicon Valley VC people. So right. that cued us to basically fix the things that we saw as wrong with Bitcoin, and so one of those things we saw was that miners have too much power, right? You mine Bitcoin blocks, you have an enormous amount of power because miners have effectively a monopoly on what goes into a block. So if we wanted to change the consensus rules, miners can block that, and they did block that for I think it was 3 years for SegWit. So they really sat on that, and it caused all kinds of drama within the Bitcoin community, and I don't like that. And then the other thing was when it comes to changing rules is who's in charge, right? So in addition to the miners having too much power, it begs the question: who should be in charge? Should it be Coinbase? Should it be BitPay? Should it be Blockstream? Should it be the users who operate the full nodes? And what we said is, listen, the people who hold the coins should really be in charge, right? It should be a sort of a proof of stake system from a governance perspective. And then the other thing that we did was we focused on funding and sustainability, and that's why we have that 10% of every block goes to a treasury in our consensus rules. Because I saw what happened with Blockstream, where it's like Blockstream's done a lot of good work, but their incentives aren't directly aligned with the network. Their incentives are to do their own thing and accumulate power for themselves to their own ends, as opposed to build out the generic infrastructure, for the common good of the project. So those were like the three major things where I was like, this really needs to get fixed. And that's what drove us to create Decred, because we saw that these things they're never going to happen inside of Bitcoin.
You're muted. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin, even though they've been around, they're the granddaddy of blockchain and cryptocurrency and stuff like that, but there are limitations to it. And, it's really nice to see that people are taking those things that are issues and really trying to work on it instead of basically kind of copying or, doing kind of a side chain to what they're doing, and just really focusing on solving issues. So that's pretty cool. I did have another question.
Take a quick break though, Meredith.
Oh, yeah, okay. We'll be right back after this. I have to find the right one. Okay, here we go.
Check it out. MobileEdge.com has award-winning products with innovative features and contemporary, edgy designs that empower you to look sharp and travel smart with your mobile tech. Your beloved, not to mention expensive gaming gear and mobile tech devices are an extension of you, so give them the protection and style they deserve wherever you go. Find them at MobileEdge.com and protect your tech with Mobile Edge. Bring it on. Hey Geek Insiders, Mobile Edge has a special coupon code for our dedicated listeners. Get 25% off your Mobile Edge gear using coupon code GEEK25. That's GEEK25. Geek out.
And we're back. This is Geek Speak with our special guest, Jake Yocom-Piatt. And for the Mobile Edge people, make sure that you head over there and use that coupon code. It expires December 31st. So, Jake, beyond the exchange, the cryptocurrency, we saw something with the municipal voting and everything, which is great. What other applications do you foresee people kind of onboarding with the Decred for?
Well, I think that a lot of cryptocurrencies, as much as anybody wants to say that even Bitcoin that's been around the longest is like, oh, it's a medium of exchange, or oh, it's a unit of account. It's really primarily a store of value. That is that when you purchase and hold for a medium or long-term period of time assets that are essentially finite issuance, it's a much better bet than, say, buying, stocks and, typical financial instruments. So Decred aims to, like many other cryptocurrencies, be a good store of value. That is that we can evolve in ways that other cryptocurrencies can't. We're steadily offering more and more functionality, for example, privacy, and then the ability to do cross-chain atomic swaps, so that we're building out this infrastructure so that it becomes a better store of value over time. And I would argue that is, an adaptable, flexible store of value is really the main use case for Decred right now.
Mm-hmm. So now, is there a finite amount of token, or do you have something where maybe there's a controlled burn to make sure that this store of value stays?
Yes. So we decided to adopt the Bitcoin approach here and go with a fixed issuance. So we have a maximum of 21 million coins. I think there's roughly
not a lot.
Yeah, there's not a lot, and roughly 12 million of them are already in circulation. So we're past the 50% point in terms of mining and issuance, and there's not that many of them. And as much as any blockchain project can, try to struggle through it, but the early times of issuing cryptocurrency on your blockchain is always a little bit hard, especially if you have a high emission rate. And just like you pointed out, a lot of projects choose to have a tail emission where it's, some percentage of new coins are issued every year. And I think the reason, and this is me inferring, I think the reason that they didn't do that with Bitcoin is because if you have that knob, people will argue about it and fight over how you turn it. Oh, should it be 5% a year? Should it be 3% a year? Should it be 2% a year? Should it be 1% a year? Let's elect a board of governors to decide how that knob gets turned. And it's like we're right back to central banking in that, in that context. So we decided to, leave the knob removed, in terms of how Decred works.
Very cool.
Very good.
Now, a question that I had with the as we call it around here, the worldwide pause that hit everybody, March and April. Have you guys seen more interest in Decred over this last few months, or has it just been kind of the steady growth that y'all were seeing before?
Well, we've seen all sorts of things happen with price action. Like our price hasn't been so great for 2020. I'll just be completely, frank about that. But I think a lot of this is related to things like DeFi. I know you mentioned it earlier in the, earlier in the program here. DeFi has really gotten a lot of attention because it has made a lot of people rich, and that makes for good stories on the news, right? Like, crazy 20-year-olds driving Lamborghinis and that kind of stuff. Right. So that's not really how we roll. You'll never see me in a Lamborghini, no matter how much money I have, and that angle doesn't really play with Decred. And I think that DeFi is just a very different kind of system where it's it's people looking for quick turnarounds and quick gains. Whereas I think that the approach that we're taking is just like you pointed out, a slow burn and build, and and just keep doing that and do it in a way that where we don't run out of money and we don't run out of like power. The way that, say, Bitcoin has, just after a certain point, it's like, how can anyone build anything of substance for Bitcoin unless they've got millions of dollars in VC funding? And that's really more or less where it's at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
now, Go ahead, Matthew.
Oh, I was just going to let everybody know that if they're listening on the podcast or on the Indie Vote radio show, you can learn more about Decred and get your own wallet at just Decred. That's DECRED.org.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the wallet download is free and secure. Now, is that based on? Is it local to a person's computer, or is there another app?
Yeah, everything. We're security nuts at Decred, so anything you do is entirely localized. So we never see your coins, we never touch your coins. The only thing that people can do is that when it comes to voting and staking, if you want to lock your coins, there are services that will vote on your behalf, just from an availability standpoint, because not everyone wants to or has machines running 24/7, 365 in their house. So
right.
but it takes no custody of coins. It's just votes. So if as long as you trust somebody to vote for you, it's all good. But I'm not talking about like nation state style.
Right. So, but you can assign somebody as the proxy then.
Exactly. Yeah. You can delegate the voting authority on one of these tickets. So as long as someone votes for you, they vote for you, and then you get the subsidy from the voting.
Very good. Now, I did have a question about the mining. Is that open source where anybody can kind of hook up a server?
Well, it is. What we did is that our algorithm that we use for the proof of work mining is it is GPU friendly, but there are now ASICs. So if you want to do mining, you do need specialized computer hardware. So it is possible to obtain this, but you have to work a little bit to get it.
Okay. So anybody who's interested, now where can they find that information on decred.org, or do you have another site?
You'd have to look up Decred ASIC miners, and then you can find them, source them, purchase them, and hook them up. And it's a pretty similar situation to Bitcoin, in the sense that you could GPU or CPU mine Bitcoin, but the amount you get is going to be vanishingly small. So you really need the more current special hardware and. What is it? I think that most of the stuff that we have comes from, I think it's StrongU and WhatsMiner are the two producers of the more recent ASIC gear.
Okay, so the non-technical term is you'd be collecting dust, guys. Dust.
Now, do you guys have a social media area? I mean, are you guys on Discord? Are you active on Reddit or anything like that? Is there a Decred community?
Oh yeah, the Decred community, we have sort of internal work chats on Matrix, and then we have social media. We typically communicate on Twitter more so than Reddit. And then we also have Telegram and Discord and all of that. And what we do is we actually we bridge the communication. So Matrix is bridged with Telegram and with Discord. So if you hop on one, you're roughly on all of them.
Oh, okay, very good. Now, one of the things that we love, because it's Geek Insider, we love to get inside the geek. The genesis story of you. Like, how did you fall into blockchain?
Well, before all of this, I worked on a secure online backup service called CipherTight. The process went nowhere. It burned quite a lot of money. It was a painful lesson, but what it taught me is that I was very interested in privacy and security, but not in a way that made me any money. And so what it would do is that, hey, you want to back up your information online? There's a bunch of services that do this, and they apply, half-ass encryption and don't really deliver anything very, very, very useful for people who are security minded. So we tried to, create a service offering in that context. And I learned the hard way that if you aren't ahead of the curve when it comes to, investment capital particularly out of Silicon Valley, you just get run over by the people who have the investment. So it's like, even if you start up something that's a decent service, decent idea, decent price, somebody has if you're late to the game, somebody will always show up with tens or hundreds of millions of dollars and just, outprice you. So that was a very useful, albeit expensive lesson. And it taught me that, computer security, there, it is interesting. There is an appetite for it, but it's very challenging to make money at. And then when I saw cryptocurrency, I've been keeping watch on Bitcoin since like 2011. And then I saw that, and so CipherTight was going on at the same time, and I shut down CipherTight in 2013. And I was like, we're going to pivot to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is far more interesting than this other stuff we're working on, and there's already a lot of money and interest in it. So it's like I felt like it was a good opportunity to get ahead of where the quote unquote smart money typically is, and it's worked out. So I put myself in the right place at the right time after being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Painful lessons sometimes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. The best lessons are often expensive.
Yeah.
Well, that could kind of segue into our last question, Meredith. If unless you have something else you wanted to ask him.
I did because I kind of want to know how you feel about like where the direction is, like who your ideal, I guess, users are, or type of businesses and things like that, because we see the exchange, we see the voting, where that kind of feels like a small test area where that could expand in things. What about like gaming, or, where the potential for blockchain, and I don't know why more people aren't jumping onto it. The potential of in-app purchases and things like that on a blockchain. What are your, what are your dream clients as far as who you would like to see jumping onto Decred, the blockchain?
Well, for right now, and I mean, like right now, we're really looking for people who care about sovereignty, people who aren't a huge fan of, central banks issuing huge amounts of money and just, diluting the value that everyone's built up over their lifetimes. And, and also people who care about this infrastructure. If I had to, sort of position Decred against Bitcoin is basically a commercial bank, and Decred is basically a central bank. So we've automated central banking in a way that Bitcoin just hasn't, right? Everyone's going to argue and fight over changes in Bitcoin, whereas we have a smooth process for resolving disputes and making decisions as a group with Decred. So we're really looking for people who understand that, there's more to this than just time stamping. I feel like human society is pervaded by rigged games of various sorts. Everyone wants to, in a way, running a successful business means that you're good at rigging games. And rigging games is, in my view, no way for the human race to really evolve. If we're all just trying to screw each other constantly, via exploiting unfair rules, then collectively we're not going to get anywhere. We're just going to spend all our time fighting. So that's sort of, what I consider to be the ideal view in the context of Decred. And then when we talk about applications and where things are going, is something that we've just recently added in our coming 1.6 release is Lightning Network support. And Lightning Network, we already support it, and we've had it active for a while, but we're adding support in our graphical wallet. And that process is really incredibly important. That is, if we want to talk about in-app purchases or, game currencies or monetization of things in a virtual context at scale, it has to use something like Lightning Network. It has to use an off-chain payment system, because anyone who tries to scale this stuff on chain, if it actually gets any uptake, it's just going to jam your chain, and the whole thing's going to come to a grinding halt. It'll be like Ethereum times 100. So that's really where I view sort of the future going, which is that the future really is these off-chain payment networks, and we're hoping to come up with some fun use cases for that on Decred in the near future, so that we can sort of draw people in, just like you describe, with things like in-app infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Now we are past our half an hour mark, and I appreciate the time that you took to talk about Decred and what's happening in the world of your blockchain. It is exciting stuff. This is, I don't know if it's revolutionary because it has been around, but I think people are finally waking up to it.
Right.
And I think that's a really good thing because, again, with the sovereignty, with those timestamps, with provenance, those are such important things. For me personally, as a writer, I love the idea of blockchain, time stamping my stuff as far as copyrights and things. So I see the potential with that. But Matthew Jake, is there anything else that you wanted to share with our audience as far as, your the project and where you're going with that?
Well, we do have a really big release coming up. We've gone through a number of release candidates in the past several weeks. We have our 1.6.0 release coming up where we've added support for privacy features. We've had those for a while, but we're making it more broadly accessible. And completely forgot to mention this, is that we are decentralizing our treasury. That is, if you look at the way most projects operate in the space, there's a centralized corporate entity that runs the whole thing, and sort of like the Ethereum Foundation or the Tezos Foundation, these centralized corporate entities that run basically all the ICO funds that they raised. And to date, no one has a system for accumulating and storing value for the network as a whole. And that's what we're adding. In our 1.6.0 release, we're going to be pushing a consensus change where we can all share control of the treasury. So for example, if I wanted to go to the casino with all of the, with all of the coins, everyone else can go, absolutely not, Jake, and basically veto that. So we're sort of opening up our funding process to the collective decision-making that we already have in place.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Now, I had one other question too, real quick. Jake, what do you think has to happen? Is it a series of things or what, where we will start seeing more mainstream adoption of crypto?
I think one of the things that really has to happen, I've already touched on, is we need off-chain systems in place. Off-chain systems allow us to have a user experience that's really similar to credit cards. So for example, if I wanted to send you, 1 Decred, I could do it and snap my fingers and in a second or two, boom, it's done. As opposed to when you send on chain, you always have to wait for blocks to confirm and how many confirmations does it have? So that user experience is really, sort of at odds with what people are used to. The other thing is that, we're seeing it right now in the United States, is that the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government are, issuing debt and credit like willy-nilly in the face of, C-19. And as a function of that, it's really debasing the currency we all use. And so if this process continues, which I suspect it will, that's going to drive a lot more people to be like, listen, hey, what are my options in terms of not losing purchasing power over time for the money that I've earned from my job? Like, you save $1,000 in a bank account and it's like you sit on it for a few years and it might be worth half what it was when you started with it. So that is a very upsetting and difficult thing to deal with. And I think that a lot of people are only now starting to see this in the context of C-19. That is, things have gotten bad enough that people are like, man, this food's getting expensive. Oh man, my rent's getting expensive and things like that. Whereas before it was just like, la-di-da, I don't really care about this. It's only a few percent a year. So it's sort of like people used to be boiled like frogs, and now they're starting to turn the heat up quicker. And people are like, oh man, I got to jump out of this pan. And I think that combined with this user experience of off-chain transactions will catalyze this whole process.
Great. And I think you're pretty spot on there. I haven't been following crypto for the majority of this year. Before that, I was all in it. Meredith and I both worked at another spot where we followed crypto quite closely. And so I've just been kind of curious about how things were going and where we're at as far as getting that mainstream adoption, because that was always just one of the biggest things. Is just like what you said, you go to do a transaction and it takes several freaking minutes or half an hour before your transaction is verified. But
yeah, we want instant gratification when it comes to something like that. We don't want to wait 15 minutes for like a Bitcoin ATM or 15-20 minutes or so. And so that you spoke about it with the scalability and everything. When people are trying to actually do that on chain, they have to wait for those blocks to be produced for it to be approved and, go through whatever consensus model that you have. And that makes it really slow. And so any uptick can definitely clog up the works and stuff like that. So it's very smart to try and implement those off-chain apps and tools in order to do that, so that maybe how does that work? Is it that they collect that data and then just kind of submit it as one transaction?
Well, yeah. So the way Lightning Network works is similar to what you described, which is that if we look at the banking model, right, is that banks have thousands of transactions flowing back and forth between them on any given day. But what they do is that instead of settling every individual transaction, which is how a blockchain works, on-chain transactions, they settle up and they go, what was the net? Like the net was $100 one way, $50 the other way. Okay, so it's a $50 to one direction when we net it out. So that's what Lightning Network does, which is that it basically allows all of these individual transactions to flow back and forth. But then at the end of the day, when it comes time to net it all out, you can condense it down to a single transaction on chain, so that you can avoid having all the intermediate transactions clogging the chain. And that's how these things called payment channels work. So for example, you and I might do 1,000 transactions back and forth, but then let's say you or I goes, okay, I want to turn this into on-chain funds. You do a single transaction at the end of that, and then that's the only thing that hits the chain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely more efficient.
Yeah, it's definitely more efficient. There's definitely some complexity that comes with it. Even from the people who did most of this development work, Lightning Labs, there was a certain perception, it's going to be this difficult, and it's like, oh well, there's a whole bunch of work that has to happen for this to occur. And so it's been kind of funny watching. There's people who absolutely hate Lightning Network, and they're just like, oh, another 2 years and it's never going to happen. And it's like, this stuff is not easy, guys. It's not just like you snap your fingers and this stuff's done. It's like it takes years of work to build. And we're finally at the point where we're ready.
Right. I mean, that plus it's trust. With new technology, people have a lot of convincing before they get onboarded into, saying, okay, take my money.
Yeah. And when there's real world money involved, particularly like large amounts of money, this sort of wild west, like, what is it, fail fast VC kind of thing. It's like, you don't want to be on the fail side of fail fast when it comes to cryptocurrency. It'll be like, you fail fast, somebody's going to lose $300 million or something. If you got, if you're Ethereum, it's like, oh, fail fast. And it's like your smart contract jammed. And now there's like $300 or $400 million that had just disappeared.
Yeah. It's like, how do we fix that? Crap. But not only that, I mean, with Bitcoin, Silk Road and all that stuff, there was a bad reputation as far as, you're all pirates and thieves and things like that. So just, I think that reputation is kind of behind crypto now. I mean, some people, just because they like to complain about stuff, they'll bring it up. But I hope that we're behind that, because there's so much potential with just blockchain technology in general. But we're getting to the 45-minute mark, and we don't want to keep you, Jake. You're probably very busy, and it is almost 10 o'clock where I am. But Matthew, we have one question. Jake, I would ask it to you, but I always screw it up. So I pass the mic to Matthew for this one.
Yeah, after too many times messing it up, we just decided that I should do it going forward. And I'm interested to see what your take on this one's going to be. And here in the next week, when we're on break, I am going to go through for the entire year, and I'm going to put all of our guests together and their answers to this. So Jake, if you could go back in time and give your younger self just one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh man. Buy the Bitcoin in 2012 you were about to buy and you didn't. You guys will love this. Like I was about to buy a lot of Bitcoin in 2012, and then I had signed up for Mt. Gox, and it had just gotten hacked. And I was like, fuck this! I'm not putting money into this site. This is a scam. I'm gonna lose all the money. It just got hacked. And then it was like, well, I mean, what an awful decision that was. But at the time, it seemed like the right decision.
How many
Do
were
know
you?
what my Bitcoin story is when it first came out. When did Bitcoin first come out? There were a couple of developers for the Mycelium wallet, and I was in some chat or something like that, and they were like, "Hey, download this app, and we'll send you a Bitcoin each." And it was like, "You guys are creepy bastards. I'm out of here." And I said, "No." Oh man, I just want to kick myself. True story. I'm like, and that's why when I hear opportunities like that, I'm like, oh, so you only have 21 million Decred? I'm like, I need to have some of that in my wallet. So guess what I'm going to be doing after this?
Well, Jake, we definitely appreciate you joining us tonight. And folks, again, if you're listening out there and you're not watching live on our YouTube, shame on you. Make sure you get over to the YouTube channel and hit that like and subscribe. And you can visit decred.org to learn more about Decred and to get your wallet and to get rolling with Decred. And that's going to do it for us. Jake, thanks so much again, sir.
Thanks for having me on, Meredith and Matthew.
You bet.
Have a great evening, you guys. On that note, have a great weekend if we don't see you, and we'll talk to you soon. This is Geek Insider, Geek Speak, geeking out. At Geek Insider, we foster relationships with those in the geek sphere so we can give our audience the insider view of entertainment